Hello, today I'm taking a look at a branded Chardonnay from the Monterey region of California. This is Diora's Splendeur du Soleil 2019 Monterey Chardonnay. The brand is owned by the Delicato family, a family-owned wine group established in 1924. They have somewhere in the region of 6,000 acres of estate vineyards, and those are throughout California, in the Napa Valley, in Lodi, in Sonoma, and in Monterey. But they also have interests in Germany and in Chile. So they're quite a large, influential group. There was a period not so long ago when Monterey was very much in vogue as a cool climate region, and I think Delicato were quite enthusiastic in pursuing that. And this wine is the result of 30 years or so of hard work from them in this region. The wine is a mixture of fruit from two vineyard areas. Principally, about 80% of the blend is made up with fruit coming from the San Bernabe AVA. Delicato bought vineyards in San Bernabe in the 1980s. In fact, in 2004, when the area gained its AVA, it was they who had lobbied really quite hard to get that AVA. An AVA, an American viticultural area. Grapes had been grown in and around San Bernabe since about the 1840s. However, the Salinas Valley and Monterey has some issues because although it's a very cool area, the region, and particularly some parts of the Salinas Valley, can be too cool. Thankfully, San Bernabe is of the cooling influence from Monterey Bay, that it's not too cool to ripen grapes properly. And Delicato have worked very hard in terms of replanting the vineyards and remodelling them to mitigate the cooling effects of the winds that blow up and down the Salinas Valley. About 80% of the blend for this wine comes from the San Bernabe vineyards. The other 20% comes from a vineyard called River Road in the Santa Lucia Highlands. It was a vineyard that was planted in 1972 by the McFarland family and was bought in 2016 by Delicato. So a well-established vineyard, and the Santa Lucia Highlands really sort of sit above San Bernabe, and it's a cooler area. So where the fruit from San Bernabe gives a rich, tropical nature to the wine, here the fruit coming from the Santa Lucia Highlands is giving a cooler, more citrusy note. Soils here are all quite free draining. In San Bernabe they tend to be sandy with some limestone. The sand prevents the vines from becoming too vigorous, and the limestone provides a water reservoir, keeping the vines alive but just giving quite slow, gentle ripening. When the time comes to harvest, picking is done in the cool of the morning. The winemaker here, an Australian called James Ewart, joined the company in 2000. The winery is set up for everything to be vinified by block. On arrival, the fruit is gently pressed and run into stainless steel tanks. It's temperature controlled, so it's kept cool and allowed to settle overnight. Next day, the clean juice is run into barrel, and 100% of the wine is barrel fermented. The oak is predominantly French, and in 2019 I believe about 45% of that was new. Fermentation starts in barrel. Fermentations are inoculated, and they use two yeast types. The one called Prix de Mousse, and Prix de Mousse is the yeast traditionally used for the second fermentation in Champagne. It tends to give quite clean flavours, be a very reliable fermenter. The second is romantically named CY3079, and that's a yeast that gives a little bit more richness and roundness. It gives honeyed notes to the Chardonnay flavours. Once fermentation is complete, all the barrels are put through malolactic conversion to soften the wine's acidity and quite deliberately to try and give some of the buttery diacetyl notes that malolactic conversion can give to a wine. The wine stays in oak for 14 months. The first 6 months of that, every 2 weeks, the yeast lees that have fallen to the bottom, having finished fermenting, are stirred back up to keep them in suspension. And that helps protect the wine against oxidation. And as the yeasts break down, it helps give richness and roundness to the wine, what the French would refer to as gras, fatness. After 6 months, they'll stop stirring. The lees remain in their barrel for another couple of months before the wine is racked clean, returned to barrel, with blending happening at the end of the 14-month period of barrel aging. So let's see what we make of the wine, shall we? Looking at it, initially you've got a medium to deep yellow colour. It's got some nice vibrancy. The wine has 14.5% alcohol. I would be expecting it to throw tears a little more readily than it is, but yes, it is clinging to the side of the glass. Let's see what we make of the aroma, shall we? Well, as you'd expect from what I've said about the production techniques, there's some rich aromas there. You're actually first of all greeted by buttery butterscotch notes that are to the fore. Behind that there's a little bit of vanilliness, some creaminess, perhaps a touch of cedary oak, toasty oak maybe. And then behind all that there's a sort of a delicate peachy note. One of the pointers towards Monterey Chardonnays is that they tend to be light, fresh and crisp because Monterey is such a cool area. They don't have quite the weight and richness of something from Carneros or Sonoma or something like that. So let's have a taste. On the palate, there seems to be much more fruit richness. There's a ripeness, there's a stone fruit and a pineapple note. So that sort of ripe, tropical note, balanced by lovely cutting, fresh acidity. All the notes that we got of the yeast lees are coming through again and overlaying that fruit. So there's a creaminess, there are notes of butter, butterscotch, and then behind that there's the toasty oak on the mid palate. The 14.5% alcohol is adding some warmth and roundness at the end of the mid palate there. But the acidity, as I say, is lovely and fresh, and it's allowing some citrusy notes, a little bit of sort of grapefruit perhaps, to come through onto the finish and give some nice length. Sort of just behind that grapefruit, and that slightly sort of pithy grapefruit note, you're starting to get riper peach notes, touches of and some of that creamy butterscotch flavour. And there's a roundness and a richness to the texture. The wine is of medium weight. It's not a huge Chardonnay, so no, you can see there's this sort of elegant, fresh Monterey fruit in there that has been overlaid with this sort of barrel fermentation notes and lees aging notes to give it some good richness. And that's been done very well. The oak is clean, it stands out, but actually towards the end it's quite well integrated on the finish. So I think this is quite a nicely made wine with some quite clear typical characteristics. It has all the richness and oaky notes you're looking for if you enjoy barrel fermented New World Chardonnays, yet it still has some freshness and some elegance that's giving it some nice length. I don't think this is a wine that needs any aging. Its freshness keeps it lovely and lively. It's rich enough to pair with white meats or richer river fish, and there's enough freshness to cut through sauces or oiliness or fattiness. This is not a particularly expensive wine, but I think it's been carefully and thoughtfully put together to provide a balanced and enjoyable drinking experience. So I hope you've enjoyed the tasting. Thank you so much for joining us. If you have enjoyed it, do please like and share. Do please leave any comments you have, either about the wine, about the tastings we're doing, or anything else that's related to it. Also, please consider signing up and following us on YouTube. It'd be fantastic to have your support, but most importantly, I do hope you'll join us for another tasting in the very near future. Thanks very much. See you soon.